Seeking an American spouse? Well, here's the problem, and you need to know the red flags. Number one is filing your case without any shared bank account. And when I say bank account, it doesn't have to be the traditional brick and mortar. You could use Ally Bank, one of those online banks. I'm not sponsored by any of these banks, but you have to have some kind of joint account. Now, people ask, do I need to have a will? No, you don't have to have a will, but it certainly helps. Okay, it's not a requirement, but what is a requirement that USCIS doesn't really flat out state is that there needs to be some kind of, they just say financial accounts, I believe, in instructions, but they want to see that you share the account. You're commingling your accounts, meaning if for some reason one spouse want to ditch, I made a video about that the other day, but they want to ditch, I want to say ditch, but they had access to your account and needed to use your account, or not your account, but together, your account together, they could do that, right? They have access. They can use a debit card, or if it's a credit card, add an authorized user for that. That's what I recommend, okay? And of course, you got to trust each other. If you don't trust each other to join each other's account, it only takes one account. You don't have to join more than one, all right? But if you don't trust each other to do that, might not want to get married. I don't know. That's just my personal thought. There's not immigration legal advice, but you might want to think about that, all right? Because imagine what possible problems could be in the future. Not even immigration related, but because ultimately, even in 2023, even though the trend right now under President Biden is that most marriage cases, their interview is waived, sometimes in an interview. And every time we go, one of our attorneys, that's not a bad thing, okay? That they just want to verify the marriage or the legality of the marriage is what I mean. So it could happen. So with that being said, you want to make sure you have the evidence ready. So that's number one. Red flag is people who don't file with a joint bank account. So if you're in the middle of this case right now pending and you're like, oh shit, I heard of John's advice here. Yeah, you better get your act together, get that at least one account together. Okay, folks? Because by the time, let's say like 12 months later, you're like, what the hell? I got an interview. I didn't get it waived. Well, shit, the freaking interview notice says, bring your accounts, like bring your evidence. So you don't want to go to that interview empty-handed, folks. Okay, that's going to be wasting your time if you don't have anything. So that's why that's number one. Number two red flag, providing too many photos. Okay, and people tend to provide too many photos when they don't have as much transaction activity in their bank account. So I've had officers tell me before, not our clients, but like talking about other people, like, yeah, there are too many photos. Like I've had clients bring me a photo album. I was like, oh, bro, that's not a good idea. Just give me your top 10 photos. That's all I care about, right? Or you file your own top 10 photos. And you want to mix in some family members, some friends. Don't just have a series of photos from the same event. Okay, that's not a good idea. Because that could have been like your wedding day in front of the judge. Then if I were an officer, I'd be like, bro, y'all don't do anything else together? Come on. You don't even have an Instagram, like any photo that you can screenshot. Okay. By the way, all social media, put it on private. Okay. Aside from immigration, you should just put it on private. That's what I highly recommend. People can just, copy people's photos. So that's just not a good idea to keep it on public. But those are top two red flags right there. I know it seems weird. Why don't they want photos? Because I've seen cases that have gone to the FBI. All right. And they state that, there's just so many it just doesn't look right. Like you just get the vibe that something's off here. Right. So they're just trying to detect us. Of course, USCIS, they're trying to detect fraud. Third red flag is not having your addresses matched up. This is weird, right? You would think that if you're filling your own form, that your information should be matched up. But let's say one spouse fills out their I-130, the other spouse fills out their I-130A, and that foreign national spouse fills out their 485, your dates might not match up. So that's another reason why to have a lawyer, because we verify that and make sure. I know it's kind of strange. You would think you have your shit together in terms of addresses, but a lot of y'all don't. And then just the honest truth. Sorry for all the cursing, but if I'm the USCIS officer, I'd be like, dude, this is a field day. Like, deny, deny, deny. Like, this is easy. You want to prevent that from happening. Okay, folks? You want to get your shit together and get it going correctly. File it correctly. Because how can you depend on a lawyer to get it done correctly for you if you can't provide the correct addresses? Just going to be honest, right? But that's why we come in and we look at the forms side by side, like, okay, what's off here? Okay, like something's wrong. And so we actually follow up and make sure that, hey, by the way, this address I see, like, and we cross reference with the lease or your mortgage when it started, when you signed off on it, when you started living there. It's like something looks off, right? And maybe it's all true. Like, okay, one spouse has moved in 2 months later because that spouse lived in a different state, different city, so needed time to move, right? Pack their things and move to where you live. So that's totally understandable. But that's the point, having that credible story ready for the interview if there is an interview. But most of the time, the spouses don't match the addresses. Okay. Of course, at some point you lived in two different addresses and moved in together. But if your marriage been and they ask for the last 5 years of addresses, but if you've been living together for a while, you moved from place to place, let's say a couple different places, you want to make sure those addresses are correct. Again, whether you hire us or you file yourself, yeah, USCIS will just mess you up that way. But yeah, you want to be careful. Okay, Emily, your question is about my red flag earlier. So how does USCIS handle case that couple travel a lot, so the address changes every 6 months? Well, I mean, does that person have a home base? If you have a home base, then the address will be the same. So, I mean, I know these days some people are traveling abroad trying to take advantage, or not take advantage, but the pandemic is over. So in that sense, traveling, but it's more about the intent to live somewhere permanently. So if it's just traveling from, let's say, someone staying month to month, I wouldn't put that address in France, for example. I would just keep the home base address in America, essentially. Okay, and the original address. My red flag was more about people who maybe living separately or something. Oh, travels inside the U.S. Okay. Well, I mean, they just gotta find a home base and just keep it simple in that sense. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they're living somewhere like, yeah, maybe 6 months at a time, then sure, yeah, provide that different address. But if it's kind of like hopping over to VRBO or something, or Airbnb, then no, don't put that address.